Hello, Ivy here. Today's podcast examines the definitions of hatred and how it manifests in group situations. I explore herd mentality and whether or not we are programmed to behave this way. I discuss why people hate and what happens in our brains when we do. The differences and connections between love and hate. I examine crowd psychology, whether it be physically together or via online platforms, and why and how people fall or move into group decisions on what and how they post, etc. The psychology of propaganda. All of this has been researched as a backdrop to the unknown phenomenon of this huge movement of hatred against Harry and Meghan, particularly Meghan, which has gone into such dark avenues that almost 5 years down the line, enough has occurred where there is a growing bank of evidence of the mental health implications and the emerging trauma being experienced or exhibited in both perpetrators and victims that will occupy psychologists and the various health services provision for decades. I will give examples of groups that formed as a result of the coming together of Meghan and Harry, and how, from the groups that have formed, the majority of them are consumed by an irrational level of hatred. I have included royal reporters as a group, likewise TV media personalities, UK government and its isolation policies, UK newspaper industry, particularly the tabloids, because hatred is inferred and certainly offensive rhetoric is used in powerful groups at the top of the societal structure in the UK. The general population are increasingly behaving the same way, without fear of effective challenge. The loss of life to victims of this behaviour must never be forgotten, and the growing implications for mental health and the lack of mental health provision to deal with a situation created by a divisive but loud minority does not bode well. I will include in that discussion point the United Nations definition of incitement of hatred. Ongoing from that area of research is the lack of challenge by national legal entities, which then begs the question, what are the international legal organisations and bodies responsible for citizens on the receiving end of human rights abuse? Make no mistake, hate crime is abusive. As per usual, I will cite examples of things done by one or more of the above groups and the repercussions on the physical and or mental health of Harry and Meghan, and the wider implications about the role of the international community when a nation fails to act on such a serious matter. With almost 5 years of ongoing activity in terms of bullying and harassment, and the open hatred shown for a person of colour to enter the UK monarchy by so many people, including the British royal family itself, is both sad and very worrying for the treatment of people of colour in the UK and outside of it. Every example I quote will have academic research to back up what I am saying, or at the very least, there is ongoing research into one or more of the issues I raise in this podcast. Research undertaken by a number of professionals and institutions, including renowned universities in a variety of countries, looking into the future implications of this area of work and its impact on the societies to which these groups belong. It is going to take a number of new approaches in terms of structure within health services and content of programmes and of professional qualifications in the future. It is going to require a re-examination of location and accessibility to such services when, if they appear in a town or region. Stigma has to be taken away from mental health service provision, and those involved in exacerbating the trauma being inflicted need to be addressed too. The online community is a dangerous place for many, and at the moment it is a voluntary code that exists with the owners of various social media platforms as to how much, if any, action is taken. The cost to society is both in terms of health service provision as well as financial implications. There is no pot of gold at the end of every case that presents, so as a society we need to look at doing things differently. The use of the experience of Meghan and Harry can be used as a very useful contribution to research. When we have national institutions in the UK, as one example, using terminology that is deemed offensive in terms of people of colour, and now has sunk so low to include descriptions of children who are not pure white, then, as a nation, we really are swimming in the toxic waste. As a result, when other groups do the same, then the general population who harbour such views of people of colour feel comfortable to air those views, and in most cases it goes without any real challenge. Everything that happens at shop floor level occurs because it is accepted by the immediate supervisor or manager above. This is replicated through the organisation right through to the top. The same management theory applies to a nation. The type and volume of hate crimes, as we are discussing in this podcast, reflect what is going on at each level above. We will always come back to the groups at the top of UK society. For example, the government, monarchy, aristocracy, UK media, including royal reporters. All of them are slow to react to hate speech or incitement of hateful behaviour, often because they use the same words or take part in some of the activity and it is deemed acceptable, as they know the other pillars at the top of UK will not challenge it. All scratch the back of each other. My views, and I stand by them, when these groups allow a couple to be put at risk in terms of health and safety, and a growing number of tangible death threats, along with the keyboard warriors who openly post death threats on various forums, then I strongly believe that international legal bodies need to step in. If they don't, or can't, what is the use of any United Nations international forum? There will be details in an article that is accompanying this podcast, giving details of all the reference material I have used. There is no international legal definition of hate speech, and the characteristics of what is termed hateful is controversial and disputed. In terms of what the United Nations understand hate speech to be, and as outlined in their strategy plan of action on hate speech, it states this as follows. Any kind of communication in speech, writing or behaviour that attacks or uses pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of who they are, in other words, their religion, ethnic origin, nationality, race, colour, descent, or any other identifying factor. Why do people hate? Hate is a feeling of hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or a sense of injury. It is extreme dislike or disgust. Hatred is an emotion. Extreme hatred can inspire violence. Hatred is a feeling everyone has felt and experienced at some point, especially after betrayal or a hurt physically or emotionally by someone. Feeling hatred over a long time and holding on to hate can be detrimental to the mind and body. Hatred changes the chemistry in the brain. Hatred can trigger aggression whilst feeling hateful to either defend or attack. Flight or fight responses are created and in turn increase two hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones can cause insomnia, anxiety and depression, can affect mental health. Over time, stress hormones lead to inflammation throughout the body, resulting in significant health consequences. The more intense the emotion, the more physically demanding it is to contain it, leading for it to cause involuntary clenching of the jaw, grinding of the teeth, and tensing the muscles. Who comes to mind in our royal family that exhibits some of those things? The opposite of hate is not love. It is mental and emotional detachment. Hatred creates an attachment to the thing or person hated the most. Hatred is an intense repulsion. Hatred falsely inflates the ego and makes one feel superior and self-righteous against the person who is hated, which only results in more pain. What is herd mentality? It is a natural desire to be part of the in-crowd. In the case of the Sussexes, this analogy of herd mentality seems apt. The queen bee has left the UK, and the swarm of hate has followed. What is this herd mentality that is developing over a person that most will never meet, but yet dominates their thought processes 24/7? A German psychiatrist based in the USA derived the term obsessive hatred. The psychiatrist's name is Dr. Michael Linden. People become obsessed with what they see as injustice. They talk and think about nothing else. Cases tend to be things in personal lives, for example, divorcing or separating couples. Again, give some thought here about the actions and behaviours over the last few years of members of the British royal family, royal reporters, media and royal fans, when we're talking about one example, divorcing or separating. In extreme cases of hatred, the urge for revenge can seem to be a psychosis. In the workplace, it tends to be dispute with bureaucracy, or a former partner denying them access to something, such as children. In this analogy, I would say the royal reporters come to mind. Denied access to the Sussexes, and their behaviour and tantrums since then do fit in with that particular example, and many more, as you will see in any research papers that you look at following this podcast. In the USA, psychiatrists are seeking to have post-traumatic embitterment disorder recognised as mental illness. There have been a number of studies since 2011 and much discussion as to whether embitterment is a diagnosis or a psychological state. I found a research paper done at Royal Holloway University in London in 2017. Here in the UK, the NHS cites chronic embitterment as part of one of their treatment programmes. Dr. Linden says that people with disorder are angry, pessimistic, aggressive, hopeless haters intent on revenge. He points out that 1 to 2% of the population suffering with this all-consuming bitterness, and says they are almost treatment resistant. Revenge is not a treatment. Advised to walk away, but many sufferers see walking away as defeat. Compulsive hatred disorder is an offshoot of obsessive compulsive disorder and is one of the most dangerous. A sufferer will respond to a perceived wrong as a lethal threat to their personal well-being and will begin a process of incrementally exaggerating the magnitude of the perceived affront until they can justify to themselves the death of the object of their hatred. Whilst it is true that people suffering from CHD rarely go through with the extreme action, they have been proved to repeatedly try to encourage others to hate the individuals to the same degree as them and possibly respond with a physical manifestation of that hatred. Those of you who have listened to previous podcasts of mine over the months know that I like, wherever possible, to use academic models to explain a process that people go through with various conditions. And also a diagram is always worth, 1,000 words. You can look at it, see the main headings, and then if you wish, go into the detail below. So I found two models. One is a 7-stage model, similar to the one that we did on grief, but this is about hatred and how it can start off very simply and how it can escalate to dangerous proportions. And an interesting fact, which I'll say when I've gone through the two diagrams, is powerful institutions are now using this. So I come back to the question, what is the international community doing? Because they really need to be on this. It's dangerous. That has been proven. Stage 1. This is of the 7-stage model. The haters gather. Dr. Linden says, not all insecure people are haters, but all haters are insecure people. Hate masks insecurities. Peer validation bolsters self-worth. It also prevents introspection, which reveals personal insecurities. Individuals who are otherwise ineffective become empowered when they join groups, which provide anonymity and diminished accountability. Stage 2. The hate group defines itself. Identify through symbols, rituals such as hand signals. Think of the events of the 6th of January 2021 and the storming of the Capitol building. Mythologies which enhance the member status and at the same time degrade the object of their hate. Extreme form is to give their life to the cause. Stage 3. The hate group disparages the target. Hate is the glue that binds the haters to each other and to a common cause. By verbally debasing the object of their hate, haters enhance their self-esteem as well as their group status. After verbal denigration, haters progress to the more acrimonious stage. Stage 4. The hate group taunts the target. Hate, by its nature, changes incrementally. Time cools the fire of hate and can lead to forcing the haters to look inwardly. To avoid introspection, haters increase the rhetoric and violence to maintain high levels of agitation. Taunts and offensive gestures serve the purpose. Racist graffiti can appear at this stage with some groups. Stage 5. The hate group attacks the target with weapons. This stage is critical. Differentiates the vocally abusive to physically aggressive. Examples: prowling the turf, looking for problems. Adrenaline increases, leads to provoking anger. Thoughts and actions leads to increased adrenaline. Anger builds on anger. Stage 6. The hate group utilises weapons. No reason for me to give details here on this podcast or article. Everyone knows what that means. Stage 7. The hate groups destroys target. The ultimate goal is to destroy the object of their hate. And anyone who has watched the series on mental health, produced and presented by Oprah and Prince Harry, you will know that Harry actually used that phrase, that they will not stop until, in this case, Meghan, they destroy the object of their hate. Mastery over life and death gives the hater a sense of self-worth and values, qualities which haters lack. The reality is that hate physically and psychologically destroys the hater and the hated. One of the various reports I looked at, researching all of this background to hate and groups forming and the outcomes, sort of the signs that we see developing around the world, the author of one report was a John R. Jack Schaefer, a PhD, who is a behavioural analyst for the FBI and is the author of The Like Switch, an ex-FBI agent's guide to influencing, attracting and winning people over. Yes, the FBI uses the 7-stage model as part of its toolkit of dealing with hate groups. In the research, looking around various reports on the 7-stage model, another model kept appearing in various reports. This one is Allport's scale of prejudice and discrimination. It is a 5-stage model, and it seems many of the researchers moved between the two because they felt they were interlinked. Stage 1 uses disparaging terms. Stage 2 is avoidance. Stage 3 is discrimination. Stage 4, physical attacks. Stage 5, execution. Again, in the article there is more detail against each of those headings and also a diagram. Allport outlines the process of how bias and prejudice evolve into discrimination and further into acts of violence. Stereotypes fall into the disparaging terms section. By perpetuating stereotypes, we help to foster an environment in which it is easier to discriminate. Once members of a group overcome any objective to discriminate against another group, it becomes easier for members of that group to graduate to the next higher level. The FBI, as I said, uses the 7-stage model along with other tools to describe how hate groups form, progress into prejudicial behaviour before entering into violence. So, I ask the question again. If it is good enough for the FBI and renowned professionals in the field of research and analysing the impact of hateful groups and the escalation processes that is integral to that structure, why or what is happening with law enforcement in the UK, the USA and United Nations, and subsidiaries in respect of the growth and structure of hate groups pursuing individuals, sometimes over years, with the full aim of ending that life, and at the very least, destroying that life. I don't need to state here again what has been happening to Harry and Meghan since 2016, and neither of the countries appear to want to get involved. Why? What are international legal forums there to do but to examine this wave of danger that is growing globally? And here we have one person who died in 1997 being chased and vilified by members of the UK British royal family and its followers, and in turn new groups were formed and who joined in the herd mentality approach. Now here we are in 2021, and Harry and Meghan are being put through the same hate model and have the added weapon of online forums as well as online news publications. Deaths have occurred, many more have mental health issues as a result of the pile-on by the various herds. And here we are again with the same hate models at play. We now have the benefit of academic research and professionals in the field working with individuals who are at various points on this spectrum. How many deaths are needed before someone takes notice? What is the magic total that will trigger action? For every paragraph I researched and every one that I included in this article, the same hate groups figure in each section in one way or another. They are a minority, but an intensely dangerous addition to the dangers some groups face in society from these hate groups springing up with apparent ease, because the various politicians in power use the same rhetoric and in too many cases have the same belief system. Children and adults are at risk. Harry and Meghan are one couple, but not the first in the UK monarchy, and that on its own should be worthy of further investigation. I will not stop whilst there is breath in my body to seek a change in this divisive culture that is springing up around us. All Sussex Squad are here to defend, and we will do so in a variety of ways. One thing is for certain, our group is not built on hate, and as a result, most of the indicators do not apply to groups like ours. But we see every day evidence of both of these models in operation in the groups mentioned at the start of this podcast, and which includes keyboard warriors who support the UK monarchy. That should be more than a red flag for the international legal community, as well as the USA, as it is 3 of your citizens out of the family of 4 that is being hounded in this way. You only have to read the sections on the effect of hatred on the body, and we all can identify members of the UK monarchy and its associates who fit that criterion like a glove. There is no need for either of these models to reach their final stage, because we have the knowledge already as to what is happening, and we have the academic research and evidence on the ground building by the day. It is beyond time to do something. Now is the time. Signing off from another podcast. Hope you found that informative. Hope you found that interesting. Look forward to speaking with you all the next time. Bye for now. Bye from Ivy. Bye.